Welcome to 365 Brothers. I'm your host, Robin Shine. This podcast introduces you to Black men from across the United States, their wisdom, their experiences, their joys. It also shares some of the triumphs after diversity. Basically, this podcast is about the humanity of Black men, just as it could be about the humanity of women, of white, of brown, of yellow. I focus on Black men in this podcast because of the statistics, the facts that Black men are more likely to be stopped by the police without a justifiable cause. Now, if you're questioning that, this podcast is the place for you to be. I ask each man the same 11 questions, and one of them asks about their interactions with law enforcement. The point of that question is to show the commonality in who is stopped, regardless of profession, regardless of age. Now, the other thing is to just share the diversity of experiences of Black men outside of what you see on TV, in movies, outside of the stereotypes and the tropes. This is 365 Brothers. Welcome. Now, if you're wondering, it is a subtle process. So don't just listen to one episode. I recommend listen to 5. When you listen to at least 5, you get it. You will truly get it. And after that, you'll either be hooked or not. But this is a 5-episode minimum, so get ready, get comfy. Today, we are speaking to a gentleman who hails from Piscataway, New Jersey, and now resides in the Southern California, Los Angeles area. He helps brands to identify the compassion that underlies their brand and help that be clear both to the company itself and their customers or clients. He is basically a humanistic marketer, a conceptual liaison. We're speaking with none other than Himyo Green. Welcome, Himyo. It's so good to have you on our show.
Thank you for having me on. I truly appreciate the opportunity to be able to express myself and be in communion and dialogue with you.
Oh, it's my favorite thing of all, to be in communication, in communion, in dialogue. So welcome. Before we go into the questions, is there anything you'd like to share about yourself that would help the listeners get to know you better?
Sure. So before I was 7 to 8 years old, I almost died 3 times. The first one was at birth. I was born with my umbilical cord wrapped around my neck. And through the birthing process, I had to be cut out of my mother. The second time was when I was probably around maybe 2, 3. And my aunt had to throw me out the window because our house was on fire.
Oh.
And the third time and most impactful was when I was around 7 or 8. And I was on a family vacation in the Poconos, and I was canoeing with my brother and my cousin. And that canoe tipped over. And I just remember wading in the water and my cousin holding on to me and me vividly telling my cousin to let me go. And that has probably had the most profound impact on my life because at such a young age, I can't believe that I actually told my cousin to let me go, as opposed to continuing to fight and fight on for my life. But luckily for me, my cousin didn't listen, and so we're here.
Yes, fortunately, thank you to that cousin. Now, first of all, okay, that's a first as something to share with the listeners. But I have to ask you, I mean, I think you've made it clear, but I just, it's only my disbelief, not my doubt, that makes me ask this question.
Mhm.
So when you said, let me go, you were fully cognizant of saying, it's okay to let me die.
I wouldn't say that I was at that age, if I was that I was fully cognizant of saying let me die. But what I would say is that I was I didn't have that fight in me um at that time. And even if I recall back, that like even the rest of that trip, there were some other things that took place on that trip that was just weird. So I don't know what it was I was actually like really experiencing or really going through at that time. I just know when I think back upon it, like I can't believe that I actually said that. And so there's like this overwhelming sense of like guilt that that is with me from thinking about when I think back to that time. It's like, damn, man, like how dude, like you didn't even like fight for your life, like, you know what I mean? So it was just so I think that there was something about that that I've been diligently working on overcoming in my life, and that's been like part of like what my drive is, to like definitely never give up on myself like that again, and be committed to the process of doing whatever the work, whatever it takes to not give up on myself like that ever again in life, so yeah.
Yeah. Oh, that's very clear. Okay, got it. Thank you. So I missed the first word. You were raised which kind of Buddhist?
Nichiren, a Nichiren Buddhist.
What's the distinction of that as a form of Buddhism?
The main distinction is that Nichiren's Buddhism was founded by a 12th century monk by the name of Nichiren Daishonin. And so he basically, through reading all of Siddhartha, the Buddha's work, all the various sutras, he came across one of the final sutras, which is the Lotus Sutra, which is where Siddhartha the Buddha basically stated that all of my prior teachings, they were pieced together. They weren't the totality of the truth. And the truth is that you are born with already having everything inside of you, and you don't have to go through all these austeric practices and stuff like that and remove yourself from society to be able to attain enlightenment. Like, you're able to do that as you are. And also, one of the major distinctions within the Lotus Sutra, prior to, it was mainly just geared towards men, right? And in the Lotus Sutra, that's where the Siddhartha the Buddha revealed that all people are able to attain enlightenment just as they are. And so the main title of the Lotus Sutra is called Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. That's the mystic law of cause and effect through sound or teaching. So that is literally the universal principle of cause and effect enacted in the world. So just like gravity, just like any other universal law, cause and effect is a universal law that is right and exact. That's what Nichiren was able to extract, and what kind of separated him from all of the other prior forms of Buddhism that came before that.
Got it. Wow. We haven't even gotten into the questions yet, but let's jump in. What's your favorite song or movie, either now or all time?
So my favorite movie of all time is Life with Eddie Murphy and Martin Lawrence. Definitely my favorite movie of all time is that movie. And mainly it's because it was just such the journey that these two gentlemen went on, the way that they converged upon one another and shared this life experience, and the joy and the fun and the what I would say the very poignant messages that were presented in that movie always hit home. The upper room. You ain't nobody gonna eat my cornbread. You can't have my cornbread. So yeah. There gonna be consequences and repercussions if you try to take my cornbread. So I could just go on and on and on, with that movie. So that's my favorite movie. My favorite song, probably of all time. It's kind of morbid, but it is what it is. That's just the duality that I live with. Is the Notorious Big's "Suicidal Thoughts"? Yeah.
And why is that?
Just because when I first heard that song, it just resonated with me so much. So, because on the outside, I do present as like I'm a very upbeat, charismatic, and very involved individual, and very like life affirming individual. But just like when you don't see the ducks legs moving so fervently under the water, that's like the inside of me is always fighting, right? So it actually goes back to like that 7-year-old me, or that 7 to 8-year-old me that told my cousin to let me go. There's this, I don't know where it came from. I've been to shamans and and different mystics and things of that nature, and there's just like this sense of sadness and darkness that kind of like resides within me. And as I've gotten older, and as I've taken the journeys to really explore and discover who I am, I guess a lot of that is called in the new age fluffy world, that's called shadow work. And so so getting to know and embrace my shadow self has also been part of my journey. As I bring my light out, equal amount of darkness resides within, right? And so I think that's also why I choose to focus on, like I said, being a person that adds value to and likes to uplift, because there's a lot underneath that is that's also dark as well, so
Yeah. It's one thing to say holistic, but a lot of times when we think of holistic, we're thinking of, I'll speak for myself, I'm thinking of, bringing all the good parts together and how it all works. Whereas, really there's embracing all of it, all of us. Yeah, that's cool. Got it. What's a favorite childhood memory?
I grew up playing sports. So one time, Pop Warner, football, my coach said, if you get a first down, I'll take you to dinner. And I wound up scoring a touchdown. So yeah, that's definitely one of my favorite childhood moments, that the fact that he just asked me to get a first down and I wound up getting a touchdown. So being able to exceed the expectations that were placed upon me is something that I get to use that as inspiration and motivation in my internal self when those conflicts present themselves inside of me, right? I just learned this term maybe last month, called ants, right? Automatic negative thoughts. And so when those ants start coming out of the anthill of my mind and heart, I'm able to quash them or wash them away by thoughts like that of when, of when I was able to, score that touchdown when I was only asked of me to get a first down.
Yeah.
Those are reminders to like, yo, show up, because when you do show up, you're going to show out.
What I hear in just these first couple answers is, it's like the phrase that comes up is channeling our life force. And that is an adventure in and of itself throughout our lifetimes. It's just, we've all got this great life force in us. And then there's, what do we do with it?
Yeah. And, it's funny that you say channeling the life force. So the name of my company is called HECA, right? Humans Expressing Compassionate Actions. And so that was the acronym. But one of my Jegnas, as recently as maybe 3 weeks ago, when I was visiting with him, he was showing me some papers and things like that nature. And he showed me this Egyptian hieroglyph, and it said HECA. And I was just so compelled by it, because I'm like, yo, that's the name of my company. I'm like, yo, whatever else you talking about, I don't really want to hear. I want to know about that. Right. Mm-hmm. And so, I left that with that kind of embedded in my brain, like HECA, what the hell is HECA? I went and started doing the research about what HECA is. And so HECA was there at the creation of the world. HECA literally means, for lack of a better term, it is the invisible force behind the visible gods, right? And so HECA, when you talk about life force, like the ka, that is literally what that is. That's life force, right? That is the life force. And
Mm-hmm.
so legitimately, what my company does, and yeah, it was legitimately the life force behind brands and organizations to help them execute their visions, right? Because I'm the life force behind these individuals. I was an actor at one point in time, and the roles and what I wanted to be as an actor is I wanted to be the best supporting actor. I didn't want to be I didn't have the need to per se be the leading man, because I always saw my role as being the best supporting actor, as being able to be on par, or if not better than, the leading man. And I choose to hold up all those that are around me, right? So that my strength comes in the way that I'm able to support and lift up those that I'm with and I'm around, right? So that's that, and it takes a special kind of strength to be that kind of leader than to be the one that's always in front and having to be the most boisterous and da 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 and command all the attention.
Yeah. No, actually, I fully get that. I'm in for sure, the last fifth of my career as an educator. And in my early years, it was learning the ropes and finding out what's what. And then in the middle years, it was a big deal to, chair this committee, chair that committee, steer this policy, steer that policy at our site. And what I found is that it's more empowering for me at this stage to be silent, more silent, and really causing others and allowing them to develop the leadership, so that when I'm gone, they are, they are the strength, and then they can empower the next leaders that follow them. And so when you talk about being a supporting actor and the particular power, I think prior to a couple of years ago, I would have said, yeah, okay, I guess. I wouldn't have said it out loud, but in my mind, I would have been like, yeah, okay, I guess. But today I can really appreciate what you're saying about, there is a real strength and power required to be that space in which others can be great.
Mm.
So I hear you.
I concur. Yeah, that's been that's definitely been, excuse me, been part of my training and coming up in the world is being able to raise your successors, you know.
Mhm. Well, that's a great transition. My next question is actually about accomplishments. And I asked this in two parts. First, an accomplishment that means the most to you personally, and then an accomplishment that has others go, oh, or, it gets that whoa or wow. So let's start with the first. What's an accomplishment that means the most to you personally?
Being accepted into college. I don't know. Others may have expected that of me, but I didn't necessarily expect that of myself. When I was younger, with my, in that younger mind, it was either going to be sports or, or entertainment, typical black male, right? Or young black male. I actually thought about law enforcement for a little bit, and maybe being a chef. And I think all those most of that had to do with my father, who passed away when I was 12. So yeah, going to college or being accepted into college, that was another experience, right? Because technically I was supposed to apply to two colleges, but I wound up applying to one because I was just like, I didn't feel like writing the essay to go for the other application, right? So I went to Clark Atlanta University. Like, I never even visited Clark Atlanta. I had other friends that went on college tours. I know that same cousin who saved my life when I was 7 moved to Atlanta. And I just knew that he was out there, and I just heard all of this stuff about the AUC. I knew I didn't want to go to an all boys school, meaning I didn't want to go to Morehouse because it was all male. And then so Clark Atlanta was co-ed, and I was like, all right, now I guess I'm gonna go here. And so, filled out the application, sent it, and I was accepted. And the best semester, to be very honest, like the best semester that I had was my first semester of my freshman year. And it was only because I just wanted to prove to myself that, like, I could go to college, and like excel in it. And even in that, there was like the easiest class that there was to take was the one that I didn't pass because I just didn't do the work. But all my other classes, it was the A's and B's, and
Wow.
so it was just mainly just to prove to myself, not anybody else, but just to prove to myself that I could, like, do the college thing. And then 5 years later, I graduated in 5 years, with my bachelor's of social work degree, and yeah, so definitely getting accepted and going to college my first that first semester.
Awesome. Fantastic. Which accomplishment is the one that when others hear it, they tend to go, oh, or wow?
Wow. I would say that it would have to be moving to California. And taking that leap of faith to move to California to pursue what was then a supposedly an acting career. And I say that because that move, I like legit moved to California by myself, and I drove across the country by myself. And I made a vacation of it, stopped in Chicago for a couple of days because I had a friend that I went to high school with that lived in Chicago. And then from Chicago to Colorado, Denver, because I had another friend that I went to high school with that lived there. So when I left New Jersey, I told everybody that I was leaving, and there was, I had a date set and all of that. And there was no turning back because I had told so many people that I was moving to California, and like I was going to LA to go pursue my dreams, and all of that. And legitimately, when I left New Jersey and I left my mom, and, like, did the that movie scene where you see the person driving off in the car, and they wave back to their mom, and she's standing outside and she's waving and she has tears and you have tears, and it's to drive off to go pursue that dream.
Yeah.
That part of the dream, I legitimately did not have a place to stay and did not have a specific destination that I was
Wow.
going to be going to when I left. The caveat to that is there was supposed to be a specific place that I was going. But prior to me leaving, as I was contacting my friend who lived out here, who I thought we had an arrangement set up, as the time kept getting closer and closer, and I'm contacting him, no response. But by this time I was pot committed. I had told everybody I was going. I had saved up the amount of money that I said I was going to save up, and we had a going away party for me and all of that. So it was like there was no turning back. And so legitimately, it wasn't until I got to Chicago that I was able to get in contact with my friend to find out specifically that I had nowhere to go. And so I spent that time in Chicago, I was going through Craigslist, found a place, and then my drive to Denver. When I got to Denver, I was able to send the deposit to the place. At that time, the friend who I was going to stay with, he went to go check out the place for me. There was the least he could do was to go check out the place for me. And then when I left Denver, I had a specific address I was headed to.
Wow.
And what I also found out was that where I was staying was also 10 minutes away from my Buddhist community center. It happened to be right in the heart of Los Angeles, so it was right in mid city. Yeah, so that's what that was.
That's a lot of faith. I hear it. I hear it. Okay. Yeah, that I have to tell you, that is a wow for me because there's no way. I'm one of those people. I need to know exactly where, when will the door be opening?
Uh-huh.
That's cool. Let's talk about words. What's your favorite quote, saying, metaphor, or book, and why?
My favorite quote comes from my Jegna in faith, and his name is Dr. Daisaku Ikeda. What our society today needs more than anything is the spirit of empathy. When the spirit of compassion becomes the bedrock of society and is embodied by society's leaders, the future will be bright with hope. Dr. Daisaku Ikeda. That's my favorite quote right now.
There's a word you've mentioned a couple times so far, Jegna. Jegna. Okay.
Yes.
So Jegna, what is that?
So Jegna is the word that I now use to replace the word mentor. It's a African word. It legitimately means a person worthy of respect, a person who protects the community and is a leader. So that's what a Jegna is, and a wise individual. And so I use that to replace the word mentor because so mentor was an individual who sodomized little boys. That was his role. People would leave their sons in the care of mentor to take care of them, and he would sodomize them to hold that position of power. So once I learned that, I am actively working on removing that from my lexicon.
Got it. Yeah, I mean, I wish you could have seen my eyes bulge. Like, seriously? That's
Hey, do your Googles. Do your Googles.
Wow. Let me guess. Greek?
Yes, ma'am.
Of course. No poking fun, but just recognizing what it
Pun
is.
intended.
Oh, that's funny. Yeah. Okay, cool. I love that quote, by the way. It's actually how I came to know you is starting in 2013. I wrote a few different titles related to taking compassionate action. And it really is not just life changing, but world changing. And so I love that quote. Which brings me next to ask, is there a person, conversation, moment, or event that stands out as changing the trajectory of your life or has had a significant impact on your life?
Yeah, most certainly. This happened around the time when like the Occupy Wall Street movement happened. So whatever year that was, I think that was like maybe 2010 or something, like, no, 2011, 12, somewhere around there. At that time, I was working in the mall for a technology company that everybody is, all the rave for when their products drop, and are fanatical about it. And so I was working for that company, and one of the customers came in at that time. He had just came back from this like retreat that was called Vipassana. He came back and was like, wound up selling him a computer. And through that conversation, that's when I found out about Vipassana, which is this like meditation retreat. You basically go away for 10 days and like unplug from the world. And it's like a 10-day silent meditation. And you meditate for like 10 hours a day. Not 10 hours at a time, but at least like 2 to 3 hours at a time, throughout the whole day. So spend my 10 days, come back, and I speak to one of my very good friends who I consider a brother, who that I met when I moving out here in LA. So much so that I call his mom my mom away from mom, right? And so he wound up being in New York at the time, and he's the one that told me about Occupy Wall Street and what was going on. I had no idea because I was off the grid. And so I wound up going to visit the encampment down here in Los Angeles. And I came across this individual who definitely forever changed my life. Because, like I said, at that time, I was actively pursuing a career in acting. And then after meeting this man, I then took on becoming an activist, right? And then took on the role of learning the ways of strategy through activism. He calls it pop activism. Literally, we met. He was about to get into an argument. We were all having this like round table discussion, and then him and the other person that I knew at the encampment, they wound up starting to get into like an argument, a heated debate, and I had to step in the middle and be like, "Yo, we were just having a productive conversation here. Like, yo, like fall back with all of that." I wound up talking to this man. His name is Mikhail Camille. He was telling me about all the things that he was up to and what he was doing. And I'm like, and I just started pressing him. I'm like, all right, so then let's meet. Like, let's meet when you want to meet. And so I pressed him. And then he was like, all right, meet me this day at this cafe. I meet him there. And 2 to 3 days later, I'm in the offices of councilmen of council members out in Long Beach. I'm like going to the mayor's office in meetings with meeting up with the mayor. I'm going into meetings with him, and we're like, I'm in a total world that I've never thought I would ever be in. I wound up meeting Will I Am and Billy Ray Cyrus and all of these people, as we were talking about, taking on leadership within the Occupy movement, and presenting real articles of like how to move that movement forward. So I was able to learn like political strategy from him, and how to strategize and how to develop political campaigns, and all of this world of stuff that was nowhere near the trajectory of my life at that time. Till this day, it still blows my mind that I was able to even do all of that stuff, and be in these places and spaces with these people. Yeah, so that was definitely one of the most impactful, and that's when I decided that I did not want to be an actor anymore. I knew I loved it, but I wasn't in love with it the way that I was in love with what we were doing for the people, of the people, and being on the side of the people, you know.
That's cool. And so are you still in communication with him?
Oh, very much so. He's in Ethiopia right now, working on a high tech real estate project out there in Ethiopia.
Wow. He lives it, is what I'm hearing.
He's living it for
Okay.
sure, for
Very
sure.
cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
Uh, so
With
what is a moment or event that highlights your experience as a Black man in the United States?
One of the things that I'm currently working on in an organization that I currently spearhead, called King Conscious. What King Conscious as an organization is specifically about is addressing or developing social emotional intelligence in Black males. And what we do know is that as Black men, our idea or sense of manhood is sometimes taught to us from a very skewed kind of way that does not particularly allow us to process, deal with, and work on developing how to positively express ourselves. And our feelings and our emotions, they don't go anywhere. They'll still live in us and they're going to come out. They're going to find a way to come out. And oftentimes, because we haven't developed the social emotional aptitude, it turns to abuse, whether that is abuse of drugs, whether that is abuse of women, whether that is abuse of children, whether that is abuse of self. And so in 2020, we had a event called Ascend the Throne. It was a conference that we had called Ascend the Throne. And we had, well over like 50 Black men having what we call King Table Talks. And that's basically like the training grounds of like where we work on positively expressing our feelings and our emotions through the healing circle methodology. And so the feedback that I got from the men that were the men and young men that took part in that, like the comments, literally how the comment section was ringing off during the conference, right? Like just seeing a constant stream of brothers saying, damn, I needed this. Like, damn, this is one of the most powerful things I've been a part of. Like, yo, I'm like, damn, I'm in the right place. I was searching for something like this. Like, this just feels so good. I mean, the plethora of comments that just kept rolling back, and like, the camaraderie that was just saying there, like, damn, that brother just said something real powerful. Like, oh, parasympathetic versus the the fight or flight syndrome, when somebody was presenting upon that, and it was just like the takeaways that they were able to express in the comment section was what was very validating. Even before we got started, the person who was the DJ'd the event was a person I met in college, and he had just experienced a loss in his life, and just the way that he still showed up, and then the way that prior to it starting, the brothers that were helping out behind the scenes, the way we were able to rally around him to like just uplift him so that he could present his best work to uplift everyone else that was going to be having a vibe off the music that he was playing, it just starting from there. I mean, even to the point where my niece, who helped out in behind the scenes with like doing like technical work of like setting up the breakout rooms and doing all of that stuff, like to be able to even hear her after it's all said and done say, I'm proud of you, uncle, for like the way that you stepped up and the way that you were able to put this off, and I mean to put this on, and for her to tell me like, yo, you were really in your element. I see how much you enjoyed being there and what it was that you were doing, right? To have that kind of validation from my niece was also was tremendously rewarding, and like actually legitimately brought tears to my eyes to be able to have her see me in that light and in my light.
I hear that she both saw and acknowledged you being in your element, and also the contribution that you are making, the difference you are being.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's awesome. Thank you. Have you had any interactions with law enforcement?
2 interactions, and it will show an interesting dichotomy, right? So when I first moved to Los Angeles, right? So I was a friend that I went to college with, lived downtown LA. So I was over there visiting him. We were, full disclosure, doing some things what LA is now known for, in the whole legalization of plant matter. And so I was going to drive from downtown Los Angeles to mid city. I stopped at a light, and all that time that I was driving home, I was definitely like doing the dope fiend lean, and just dozing, right? Because I was, Yeah. So I was at a light, and all I remember is hearing a doo 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 doo, on my window. And I just like remember waking up in some sort of shock, like, yo, what is going on right now? Where am I? Right. It was the police. So I fell asleep at the light, somebody had called the police on me. So they pull me over, bangs on my window, like, pull over, Don, pull over. I pull over, and, they take me out of the car and like, what is going on? What's wrong with you? What are you on? Da, da, da. I'm like, yo, nothing. I'm like, I'm not gonna say, yo, I've been smoking weed. I'm like, nah, I'm like, nope, I don't know nothing. I said, I'm just tired. I just moved to Los Angeles. I'm not adjusted to the time differential and all of that good stuff. And, I'm new here. I'm just trying to find my way home. So they put me through the sobriety test and did all of this. And, they had me in the cuffs. I was in the back of the car. I was praying. And so the cop is, asking me all these questions, and long story short, he let me go, because
Okay.
and theoretically I wasn't too far away from home. Now, fast forward years later, coming from another friend's house who lived in Santa Monica. I wound up spending the night over there. I leave there, I'm driving, and I'm on the highway, and this highway cop pulls up next to me. I still have Jersey plates on my car and all of this stuff. So he pulls up next to me, and in my head, being kind of being an a-hole about it, I look over at him and I wave to him. And so he pulls me over. And, I wound up getting a ticket because I hadn't switched my plates over and all of this, that, and the third. And so I wound up getting a ticket for that. But I legitimately take full responsibility for that because, number one, yes, I should have had my, theoretically, I should have gotten my plates updated or transferred over to California. And if I hadn't on the inside had the intention of looking over at him and waving with the with that asshole-ish kind of intention, then maybe or maybe not, I wouldn't have gotten pulled over. You know what I mean? If I
Right.
didn't kind of incite that. So I have to take responsibility for my part in the way that transpired. So I would just say that as, give those as like two interactions that I've had in what's been my encounters with law enforcement. And I do recognize that is not a typical, or again, not a typical experience of someone who's in my skin. Because don't get me wrong, I still tense up and feel a certain way, whenever a cop pulls in back of me or whatever. And being around law enforcement does definitely make my spidey senses start tingling. But
Right.
I also do recognize that, like I said, there's a certain level of faith and protection that I feel is around me that kind of leaves me not running into those kind of instances. And plus, I
Mm.
grew up with knowing a lot of police officers and having police officers in my family, and having friends that are cops and things of that nature. And so, I don't necessarily have the most negative of feelings for cops. I'm not definitely defund the police individual. I
Hmm.
am a reorganize policing individual, or reallocate the funds. I wouldn't say defund, I would say reallocate.
It's unfortunate that the word defund sounds exactly the way it sounds. In reality, defund the police that movement is about reallocating the resources. But when you hear it, just as I did when I heard, I was like, defund, what the hell?
Yeah, it's an
But
insightful word.
yeah,
Like who wouldn't have a pushback when you talk, like, if that's your livelihood and that's your job and that's how you feed your family, regardless of if you do it in a manner uh that is like they're legit. Like, I know cops that legit help the community and that are there for the community and are part are good, are good cops for all intents and purposes, good cops, right? And if you hear the word defund, it's like, yo, what the, like, yo. So, like, yeah, words have power. if it wasn't such an insightful word, then maybe it wouldn't be such a harrowing topic to talk
Yeah.
about,
Yeah. It would, if they could say reallocate, some other word, but defund definitely. But again, when you read the stuff, and there are some who do mean it that way. That's the thing.
Yeah,
And
exactly. And I'll be
yeah,
totally honest. Like, I'm for my people, but I'm not for not having police. I think to restructure and have community policing. But there's some evil people in our community. There is legitimately people that are preying on the weak individuals within our community that look like us, that are legitimately preying on our people. And that also goes back to that King Conscious thing and why I feel so endeared to what the mission of King Conscious is, because legitimately that evil person is that way because of the lack of love that they've had in their lives and the lack of being able to deal with their feelings and their emotions. So that's the destructive manner in which it is coming out within society. And it's unfortunate that it comes out with individuals that happen to look like them. So, like I said, it's not about defunding, it's just about reassessing the way that we do policing specifically within our community. I don't feel that there should be people from outside of our community or who haven't been trained. I was just talking to this about with my partner the other day, who happens to I wasn't asked, but who happens to be white, right? And so I was just talking to her about that the other day. It was like, yo, in part of that training, they should, like, people who aren't from our community who have to police our community should, in part of their training, should have to do with having to spend time with organizations that work within the community. And they should have to spend time before they even get their badge, before they even get their gun. They should have to spend months with those organizations that are doing work within the community so that they get the opportunity to know who the players are within the community, right? Like, that should be inherently a part of their training. Like, before you get the gun, before you do that, whatever service organization that is prominent within specific communities that are doing the real work to help the lesser of us, or those that are disadvantaged and downtrodden, they should have to work with those organizations first. They should have to yeah.
Yeah, I hear that. That would make a huge difference. If the United States was a woman with whom you could speak, whether mother, lover, stranger, neighbor, friend, what would you say to her?
What would I say to her? In the most humblest of ways, I would say that my mama told me, do not trust women. And as such, I love you. I enjoy your company at times, and I would not want to marry you. I don't want to marry you, and I would love to continue being friends with benefits.
Oh, you got me on that one. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. I think there's probably a whole bunch of listeners going, amen. What is love to you?
What is love to me? So one of a book I could have mentioned earlier was one of the books by the renowned Bell Hooks.
I love bell hooks. Love bell hooks. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah. So one of her profound books, A New Way to Love. I learned something from that, and it evoked me having to write a poem. So if you don't mind,
Feel free.
may I be able to read it?
Absolutely.
Okay. So this is entitled A New Way to Love. You were probably taught that love is a person, place, or thing. But what if love is something you bring to nurture one's own and another's spiritual growth? Now we can be love in various ways, like being caring, like being affectionate, like being recognition, like being respect, like being trust, like being honest, like being open communication, like being compassion. Our new way to love will be with us wherever you go. And love is an action you can take to everyone you get to know. So that's what love means to me now.
That's cool. I like it. Yeah.
Thank you.
All right. Well, you can't see it, but I just, maybe you can hear it. I just have a smile on my face. I really enjoyed that.
Thanks.
What is something you've learned through your profession, your training experiences, or your adventures that you believe more Black men should know? I ask that question knowing that whatever you say benefits all of us, regardless of gender, race, or any other identifiers.
What I've learned is that faith is simply be life. So faith is simply a belief in something, right? And what I like to tell people is why not believe in yourself, right? And what I've learned legitimately through my life experiences is that as I continue to live and be open to the experiences, be able to look at obstacles as opportunities for growth. Those are the moments when I'm able to exude, exhibit, and experience faith in action.
Nice. As you said, the words faith in action, it's one of those through lines throughout so much of what you shared. And that's why I was just kind of taking it all in. So now is when I ask, now that we've had this conversation, you and I, what did you get for yourself personally out of participating in this conversation?
So what I was able to get for myself personally, so there's a book that I'm currently reading right now called the Lean Startup by Eric Weiss, I think Rice or something like that. Let me see. Yeah, Eric Rice. And so in there, he's talking about in startup culture a thing called validated learning, or what he calls validated learning. And so through my experience with you, and being on 365 Black Men, 365 Brothers. What I've gotten is a sense of validated learning, because there is no coincidence that all of these years later, and we don't know where we met or how we met, or what was the impetus um, towards us having this dialogue. All I know is that you reached out to me at a time where I have my own podcast that I'm also doing called The Human Experience. And the formatting is very similar, right? Because it's like cup, passion, and action, right? And that's what drew us together to have this conversation. And then as I was able to listen to prior episodes of this, it validated my learning that the formula that I am using and the is impactful and is repeatable, and it doesn't get stale, right?
Yeah,
Because
that's
each
cool.
individual has their own expression of what those same questions are. And so so by being able to be interviewed by you, um it validated that I'm moving in the right direction. It also, by you asking me to be interviewed on your show, it also validates that I am growing and that my voice is worth something, and can be used in a manner that is and wants to be heard or something. I would say that my voice
is in demand and sought after.
Thank you for succinctly putting it the way and what I was trying to say. Yeah, exactly.
I acknowledge you, Himyo, for being a man who is about being responsible for your choices. The law of cause and effect. It's so clear that that is the foundation of all your choices. You can hear it in all of your answers. You are causing the matter of having a life that is compassionate, powerful, and meaningful. And thank you for being that and sharing that with the people you come into contact with.
I appreciate that. I received that. I am downloading that into my being. I appreciate the validation.
Absolutely.
Thank you for listening to 365 Brothers. Certainly hope you enjoyed the episode. I encourage you to subscribe. Please leave a review. I want to know what you think. Also, if you know someone who would be a fantastic guest for 365 Brothers, please direct them to our website, 365brothers.com. You'll also find all the episodes there, 365brothers.com. And your support is welcome. And remember, to listen is to love.